Welcome all to my paranormal closet where the stories and magic take place. I've long been intrigued by near-death experiences, and I've written about them in my hauntings book, Warren County Hauntings, in a chapter. Today's show is on near-death experiences, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with the terminology, a near-death experience is described as an unusual experience that takes place on the brink of death and is recounted by the individual who experiences it after recovery. Typically an out-of-body experience accompanied with a vision of a tunnel of light. So today's guest, Jack W. Gregory, the accidental journalist, is a UK-based author, consultant, and actor. During his whole life, he battled with being sexually trafficked in the UK special school system, along with battling rejection, fear, mental illness, addiction, and criminality. At one point, he lost everything and found himself homeless and addicted to crack cocaine. He got clean and sober in 2014 and began to change his life until he found himself on a deathbed in 2015, where he experienced a near-death experience that changed his life and his whole perspective. He found a new purpose in sobriety and became a Hollywood consultant, actor, poet, journalist, author of 3 books, and a podcaster. He took hold of the power of his own story and used it as a tool to educate others. He now helps educate doctors on how to deal with addicts, speaks regularly at churches, schools, and colleges about his story. So join me in welcoming him to the show. Hi.
Hi.
Why don't you start by telling us what happened to you?
Okay, so my whole life I have, as you said, battled with addiction and a certain way of life, which led to certain illnesses, and my body started to fail. I met my now wife in 2014, and we got together at the end of 2014, and 2015 is really when I started getting very ill. I couldn't breathe. There was no oxygen getting to my brain. I was really struggling to speak. I was going, I thought I was going mad because the hypoxia, oxygen wasn't getting through to my brain because of hypoxia. And I ended up in hospital after a really bad weekend of just feeling really ill. I got to the hospital around about 4:30 in the afternoon, and by 7:30 I was dead.
Oh, wow.
I had type 2 lung failure, tuberculosis, because of the life that I'd lived, and not taking care of myself. I had double pneumonia, pleurisy, and some environmental disease that they hadn't seen for about 30 years, because of when I was on the streets, and when I was homeless and addicted to crack cocaine. I'd gotten sober on the June before, the 27th of June before. I was in a crack house at 10 o'clock at night, at the 26th of June 2014. I was in a crack house, and I was sat down and I had a pipe in my hand, and I closed my eyes and I said, God, I can't deal with this anymore. Please take away this hunger, this thirst for drugs, or take away my life, because I can't live like this anymore. I was 6 stone 6 ounces. I was barely living. I'd lost pretty much everything, and I fell asleep on crack cocaine, which is a bit of a miracle in itself. And I woke up at just gone 12 on the 27th of June 2014, and I haven't used the day since. I'd met my wife a few months before. She was serving at a food bank at a coffee morning, and she'd serve me coffee with a smile, and we got talking. And yeah, so I guess by the end of 2014, we'd got together, and we were having I'd found sort of a faith, and I was part of a church called Hope. I resigned to the fact that God had taken away this hunger, this thirst, and I was like, hallelujah, but I don't want to accept Christ into my life, because if I do, I'll have to be good, and I want the option to at least be a bit naughty on occasion. And yeah, so end of February, March, I'd start to get really ill, 2015, and I'd end up in hospital. And I remember I was going quite insane, because the hypoxia was blocking all the oxygen. It just wasn't getting through. So I became convinced that the police were after me for the life that I'd lived, and that they had CCTV cameras in the room I was in, what's called a negative pressure room, which is a room that it pulls out all the air and then pushes in all the good air. It's for people that have things like tuberculosis. The only contacts that I had with people, they were in contagion suits, masks, and things on their heads and stuff like that. And it was very scary. They had to wear gloves, and I couldn't understand it. And this was way before the pandemic, before we, so it was like I didn't know what was happening. I became convinced that my family I'd caused the end of the world by this super virulent strain of tuberculosis. My mind was broken from not only the hypoxia, but from the sort of the life that I'd led, the guilt that I had from the past that I'd led. And I became quite abusive, and there were people from my church coming to pray with me. I remember my elder coming in, lead elder coming in, man by the name of Grantley Watkins, is a great church planter. And he came to pray for my soul, because they were told that they were going to lose me again, and this time for good. I went to hell when I actually died for 4 minutes, and it felt like months. I just remember screaming, convinced that everybody around my bed were police, racked with fear, with guilt, with shame, with hurt. I was just broken. And with a last sort of, I guess, bit of rebellion, they were fighting to keep me down on the bed. They were trying to strap me to the bed and stuff. One of they gave me this thing called tazozin, which is basically, it puts fire in your veins. It's an anti-infection drug, but I didn't take well to it, so it felt like they'd burnt my chest with acid. I thought they were police, and so I guess I died screaming blue murder at these people that wanted to torture me before I died. I let my bladder go in one last bit of rebellion, I guess, and then it went black for a minute or two, and then, what felt like a minute or two. And the hospital was calm, felt empty. I couldn't get out of my bed before, but I could now. I didn't, you know, I didn't have any straps on, so I got out of my bed and I was looking out of my door, the window in the door, and there was nobody there. So I thought I'd make a run for it, and there was a sound, and it sounded like an old air raid siren. So all I heard was, and I'm trying to just work out. Don't know where I am. It's not hot. It's not cold. It's not anything. I guess if anything, there are embers in the air, just falling. I walked around the ward. The beds were empty. The nurse station was abandoned. I walked out of the door and down towards the exit of the hospital. I was on the 3rd floor. For some reason, I was convinced I was on a secret floor, known to only by these people. But I'd managed to get out, and I'd managed to. I still had a cannula in my hand and a drip, and I was pushing this drip, and I was in my NHS gown, so I had a bare behind hanging out, and you know, but I managed to get to one of the doors, and I got out of the door, and it was just dark, as if the clouds had been scorched. This sound was still going in the background, getting louder and louder. The bodies were just piled in meters high, dotted around the car park. Some of them on fire. I could smell them. I could smell the rotten flesh. I could still hear this siren intermittently. It would stop and then it would start again. And to me, that was another million people dead. And I just went everywhere that I could. I went back in and I searched every floor for any survivors. They weren't there. There was nobody there, apart from me. I guess it was my own personal hell. And I didn't know what to do, so I just went back to the ward, back to my room, slowly back to my bed, just walking through the canteen. All the plates were on the floor, and it was like something out of like The Stand or something like that.
A horror movie.
Yeah. And
how long did this go on for?
So it felt like months. I went through every floor, every room, every ward, every canteen. It's a big hospital. It's a very big hospital. Went round the car park. It's a teaching hospital, so that puts in perspective how big it is. Mm-hmm. And we're a city on a hill. It took some time. And I didn't feel like I needed to eat or want to go to the toilet or anything like that. I just was wandering aimlessly around this desolate landscape, this personal apocalypse, this wasteland. And I got back to my room, and I just sat there on the bed, and I guess I wasn't tired. There was a haze in the air where the ashes were dropping, but you know, you wouldn't know it was anything else if it wasn't for that. And then it went black again, and I felt like I'd fallen asleep, and I then came to in my hospital bed, and they brought me around, and I broke. I absolutely broke, and this hell carried on into real life.
Oh, really?
And I had this personal, I call it a personal apocalypse. I was still convinced that God was going to end the world. I went mute for a while. I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't drink. I wouldn't see my daughter. I wouldn't see my ex-wife. People would come in from my church, and they would talk, and I was convinced that they were, I guess, clones, replacements, some sort of robot. I don't know, but I was convinced of this for so long a time, and it was just soul crushing. I felt so alone. I remember having
this is what happened to you when you came out of the near-death experience, correct? It,
yes.
It rolled over into real. How long did it take you before it normalized?
3 weeks.
Wow.
Of just absolute mentality.
So your experience in your near-death experience was only experiencing hell. You did not experience heaven. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, no, I didn't experience heaven.
Wow.
I experienced hell. But the life that I'd led, the guilt that I'd felt, you know, I wasn't a good man. You know, I'd been married once before. I'd cheated. I lied. I'd lost every job that I'd ever had. I was a person that liked women a lot. I would womanize.
I find it very interesting that you say to me that you let Jesus into your life, but you still wanted to be naughty. And it was almost like he was saying to you, all right, now I'm going to show you why what you're doing is wrong. And then you have this experience, and then it's almost like an awakening, an aha moment in time.
It was yeah, I mean, you know, I accepted God. I knew Jesus existed, but as I said, I wouldn't accept him into my life and take him into my heart, because I still wanted the option to be a bit naughty.
Right.
But you know, just come from that, you know, I don't believe now that God sends us to hell. I'll get to that in a minute, but yeah, it was dark. I remember having this Skype call with my daughter, and she must have been 6 at the time, and I was convinced that she was dead, and that her mum was using her mum and her mum's boyfriend were using her as a puppet, just to freak me out, just to sort of hurt me. Throughout all this, there was a presence at the end of my bed, and it didn't feel like the other presences, you know. It didn't feel insidious. It felt different. There was this one doctor, a young female Asian doctor. Now, our National Health Service, I know that some places in America that your doctors are allowed to pray with patients, and allowed to, talk about their faith. You're not here at all. You can lose your job and you can go to prison for it, because it's an abuse of power here. But I remember she had a cross, and you're allowed to wear a cross, but you're not allowed people to see it. But she'd let me see it on occasion, and she would come in and she would let me see it. She wouldn't really say anything. She'd just be pottering around the room, and then, when somebody came in, she'd put it away. But then there was this thing at the end of my bed, and I like I said, I guess after about 3 weeks of this hell in life that I'd brought back, I'd still had this rash from here to my midriff. It felt like a burn, but I'd been mute. I wouldn't talk to anybody, and there was this presence at the end of my bed, and I said, "Who are you? What do you want?" And I just heard this audible voice saying, "You know who I am. You know what I want." I said, "Well, I can't do this anymore. What do I do?" "You know what to do. You know what you've got to do." So I said, "All right, Jesus, I accept you into my life." And the way that I'd been seeing, I guess you can put it akin to like a really old sort of CRT television, if you remember them, or watching you can see I've got VHS, watching a VHS. It was kind of grainy, but as soon as I accepted Christ into my life, it went from grainy to 2K. I could see normally. I sat up in my bed, which should have been impossible because I was that emaciated. I was just under 6 stone, 70 odd pounds, I guess, which is not a lot. And I was sat up in my bed. There was nobody in my room. I was sat up in my bed. And I remember this nurse coming in. Her name's Jackie. She's a good friend of mine now. She came into my room and she went white. I said, "Hello, can I have a wash, please?" And she went out, and there was a fumbling outside and a kerfuffle outside. The doctors came in and they checked me over, and I'm saying I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, my mouth hurts because I've got ulcers because I was so emaciated and stuff, but my teeth were falling out.
Oh boy.
It was that bad.
Mm.
And I still have dental problems because of it. But they said, "Okay, you can have a wash," and this nurse brought in a bowl with a sponge, and I took my top off, and this rash was from here to here, and I started to wash. And this is no word of a lie. I have people that were there. The nurse that was there, like I say, she's a good friend of mine, saw this rash peel away and disappear. I forgot to say, through all this, when I came out, I thought that all of my family would have been brought in, and friends and anybody that from my past life would have been brought into another part of the hospital. But I could hear them holding what's called a kangaroo court outside about what to do with me, because I'd felt so judged. But that judgment had gone. I didn't feel that anymore. I didn't hear that anymore. I heard people walking around the hospital. I heard the clitter clatter of the tea trolley. And I even asked for a cup of tea, and I don't drink tea. I drink coffee. And it was nothing short of miraculous. And I do have people that will attest to that. I started to get better. People started coming to visit me. I'd accepted Christ into my life, and it was nice, but I really didn't know the journey that I would go on after that. There were people from the church that were, I've got a thing for spam. I love spam. They were bringing me in tins of spam and sweets and pop, soda, Lucozade. And there's nothing more glorious than smelling the nurses cooking your spam in their staff room because they're so happy that you want to eat.
Right.
I'd had a job before I ended up in hospital. Unfortunately, the company went under while I was in hospital, but I did get some money for my redundancy. So they said to me, if you get to 8 stone, you can leave. So I would, I'd have sweets and all day, every day, and Snickers bars and Mars bars and things like that, and just on a morning I would have the breakfast that they brought me, and then an hour later I was going down to the canteen to have a full English breakfast, fry up, and then same with dinner, and then I was having a good dinner down there, and I found a local pizza place that were doing 2 for 1 14-inch pizzas for £9. So I was getting one for me and one for the nurses to share every night, and within 2 weeks I went from just under 6 stone to 8 stone 3, and they allowed me to go home the day before my stepson's birthday, and I just began to heal. But that's not where the supernatural ends, really, I guess, because I believe in a God that is so supernaturally natural and naturally supernatural. I was going to this church, the same church. We were meeting in a high school hall on a Sunday, and I made the commitment to get baptized. And I went on the baptism course, and it came to my baptism day, and my now wife came with me, with the kids, and we walked in, and my wife tapped me on the shoulder, and she said, isn't that your specialist from the hospital over there talking to someone? So I went over, and he said, it's so good to see you. You were really poorly. I don't know if you remember me. My name is Dr. Twentham. I said, yeah, I do. I remember you. You saved my life. Thank you. I said, but, why are you here? Well, I know why I'm here. I'm here to get baptized. He said, well, my son is getting baptized today. So I had the pleasure of getting baptized alongside the son of the man that saved my life.
Wow.
Which was mental to me. It was absolutely mental. I then started an Alpha course, which started a career in Alpha. I don't know if you know what Alpha is, but Alpha is it's this course run by churches, and you go and you learn about Jesus. You go and have a meal, share a meal, and then you watch a video, and then you sit and discuss this video and talk about God and Jesus. You don't have to be a Christian to go on it, which is great. And you just learn more about the Bible, and you know. So I did that. I did 21 alphas all in all. 17 I helped lead. I did a discipleship course called Freedom in Christ, and now I'm involved in this thing called the School of Supernatural Life, which came from an idea by our lead elder. But he and his wife went to a church in Redding, California called Bethel, which is a church that believe in prophecy, and they believe in spiritual gifts and the Holy Spirit, and you know, a God-led life. And they came back and they designed this course, and on the second year I went and joined this course. I now help lead this course 9 years later, 8-9 years later.
Can you tell me how you feel about death now?
I'm not scared, because I know hell isn't for me. Now, I don't believe that God sends you there. We send ourselves there. I didn't have Christ in my life, and I didn't repent of my sins and the things that I did. And so I was in my own sort of purgatory, I guess. I know I'll miss my children and my wife and my family and my friends and my wider family. But I know I'll be reunited. I don't want to die. I know it's going to come soon, but death is not the end. You know, and soon meaning anytime between now and whenever. But you know, I do have some illnesses still, but I have a good life, a great family. I've, over the past 9 years, I have really pushed myself into stepping out. My life is amazing at times. You know, it's hard at other times. But you know, like you said, I've had the opportunity to work on 2 Martin Scorsese funded films. I've written books. I wrote my first book, A Personal Apocalypse, which was about this and about some of my life before. I get to do this sometimes and share my voice. I do podcasts where other people come on my podcast, and I help amplify their voice, because God gave me a mission to be a voice for the voiceless.
Yeah, I see you have a huge array of topics that you are willing to openly discuss with people, like the human trafficking and sexual slavery and exploitation, because you personally experienced that yourself. To be willing to openly discuss that with others is amazing. And then you talk about addiction, and you talk about homelessness, mental illness, mental health, crime, recovery, losing people to suicide and murder, forgiveness. It's just amazing, because the voices you can reach, planting those seeds in discussion, helping people to heal. See, now this is your purpose. You've discovered what your mission is, and
it all came from prophecy. You know, this school, the School of Supernatural Life. I did the course a few times, and then I would help out doing the words for worship, and then hang around and just listen and things like that. And we encourage people to listen to God and to pray for these gifts, and we encourage praying for prophecy and for words and pictures for other people. And 4 people from 4 different courses came to me and said, "You are going to be a voice for the voiceless." I wanted to be an actor, I didn't want to be anything else. They said you are going to be a voice for the voiceless. And then in 2016, I spent 6 months working with escapees of human trafficking. I wasn't ready to look at my past, but I then realised, because I didn't know I was trafficked, I didn't know that what happened to me was trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was just plain abuse from several people, but I learned about what happened to me, and then I started to heal, and now I want to help other people heal.
That's wonderful. A
Because
Personal Apocalypse, is it available on Amazon?
it is. A Personal Apocalypse is available on Amazon. My second book, Between the Streetlights and Red Lights, is available on Amazon. Everything is available on my website, jwgreg.wordpress.com. Everything through there. The site is massive. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, I'm told. I've been blessed to be able to do quite a few of these, to speak about myself and lots of different subjects, and we do a few collaborations as well as 3 series of my own, live and undrugged. But I absolutely love to educate. I believe that if we've lived a certain life, a certain way, if we've experienced difficulties in any sort of way, then it's a blessing to us, but it's our responsibility to teach. If you can teach. If you can't teach, you need to teach. You need to learn to teach, because there are people dying of addiction, of people being trafficked, that fall into addiction, which was my route into addiction. There are people dying on the streets. Homelessness is at a high in this country. I'm very, very blessed and lucky. I'm sitting here talking to you from my garden shed. It's with the heating on. It's -3 outside.
Oh my goodness.
We're not even in full winter yet.
Oh wow.
So, when I live in the south of Norfolk, so we're pretty much in the countryside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very cold. Our main city, Norwich, is a emotional vampire. It's a beautiful city, a very, very beautiful city, with lots of history, but the people are hard work. And there are a lot of people in that city that are really broken. There's a lot of homelessness, there's a lot of addiction, there are a lot of, I guess you would call them projects, housing schemes, where they're in flats that 20, 30 floors high in the middle of the city, high-rise flats. The austerity in our country is an all-time bad. We have a government that really don't care, that are only in it for themselves, that have done nothing but bleed our country dry, and the poor are really feeling it. We're in a recession, especially when COVID hit. People lost jobs, businesses. Turns out COVID was a blessing for me. The first lockdown, I had a bit of a mental slump. The second lockdown, I started doing this. this was the spur that I needed to start, and it was all because of a conversation with a friend saying, why don't you get into podcasting? I said, I don't think I could do that. I haven't got the voice for that. I don't think people would understand me. And he said, you don't give yourself much credit. You can interview me if you like. He is one of the top hostage negotiators in this country. So I interviewed him, and then I got a guy by the name of Dominic Nagus, who was at one of the time one of the hardest men in Britain. And then I got a few celebrities, and it just went from there, really. And
that's exciting. Well, what's the name of your podcast?
It's called Live and Undrugged. It's on my website. It's on YouTube under the Accidental Journalist. I'm trying to build my numbers on there. It's not all about numbers for me. If I educate one person, I'm very happy.
Mm-hmm.
One person at a time, I'm very happy. But I do believe that I'm called to educate more. I get to do this in a few weeks. Just after Christmas, I get to teach a few government employees who are running a trafficking scheme, anti-trafficking scheme. I get to speak to them and give them some training. I've trained new GPs to deal with addiction, and this is from a man that was 10 years ago, was broken beyond anything. I'd lost all control, lost my family. I'd tried to kick my ex-wife's door in, and I just wanted to die, to now really sort of trying to push a shared combined wisdom. It's not just my wisdom, it's wisdom that I've learned from other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went to my first NA meeting I guess I was 14 years old when I went to my first AA RNA meeting, 12-step meeting. So I had 30 odd years of in and out of the meetings and in and out of the program, and I could never get it. I'd have various years of sobriety, going through it dry, white knuckling it sometimes, and not really getting it. And it was only when I found myself in hell and then had to navigate that and navigate my way back through life, having come back from there. And I guess there's still a chance that I could go there. I'm saved, but I have a faith.
That's good.
But faith is a faith. It's not.
Well, you're making a difference. You're making a difference. So thank you for what you do. You
try.
Keep up the good work. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's all I've ever wanted to do since I started my new life. Because we need to. Our world is very broken.
Yes.
It's very broken. And it's this whole journey of me speaking to you all started with really me going on the Jeff Mara podcast, who's and I guess some people struggle with my accent. I've had to work on the way that I speak because I'm from the north of England and we speak very, very different. And people don't always understand that when I speak in my natural accent.
Mm-hmm.
I have to. I'm learning to speak slower, and so I do apologise if I'm coming across as
not at all. It's absolutely
perfect.
And I appreciate you opening up about your story because I know how difficult that can be. I've spoken to so many people on the subject, and they've each told me that they really don't talk about openly about it. They talk to other near-death experiencers, but to really talk to somebody who's a stranger, they don't usually do that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I enjoy it more than anything. I'm a northerner. I like to speak. Sometimes I have to get a bus, and I will pray sometimes, and I'll say, God, I've got this hour bus journey. Give me someone to speak to.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I've got a 45-minute wait for this bus. I'll go get a coffee from the machine or from one of the cafes in our town. And I'll wait for the bus, and I'll say, God, send me someone. And 8 times out of 10, he will.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I love that.
I have a business card with a QR code on the back that I give, and then people can view at their leisure.
Mm-hmm.
I get to affect people sometimes, which makes me very happy. And we celebrate it together as a church, as part of the school.
Mm-hmm.
We go and we. The school is run on a Tuesday night as well. It's all day on a Friday, but a Tuesday night, which is the part of school that I'm involved with. And we share our victories from the week before. We share our failures, because failures are always a road to victory. We celebrate the failures along with the victories, because we all fail. Because victory wouldn't be victory without the failures behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't win all the time. I guess that's where I am right now.
Wow, this has been an amazing discussion. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. And we'll get those links up on the summary so people can check out your books and your podcasts.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, wonderful. And to the listeners out there, if you liked listening to this week's episode and you're into all things paranormal, check out my other show, Eleanor Wagner's Creepin' It Real, out of the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, which is available wherever you get your podcasts, streamed through Eleanor Wagner YouTube channel. And if any of you are interested in reading any of my books, you can find them directly on Amazon, or you can get signed copies directly through me at authoreleanorwagner@gmail.com. I write about the history of a town and the location, add the paranormal story to the mix, and finish it all off with photos and evidence. Everybody loves a good ghost story, but there's nothing better than a real-life ghost story. So check out the books on Amazon. And I hope you'll stay and listen as Silent Crafters Stranger Part 2 takes us out of the show. Good night.